Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Tenacity, Women in Conservation. I'm Christy Nackard. I'm the Vice President of External Affairs for Palmer Land Conservancy. And if you ask my daughter what I do, she says, I protect the land and I care about the water. Unfortunately, I think many of you know Rebecca Jewett, our President and CEO, can't be with us tonight. She is not feeling well, and due to what I'm calling the snowpocalypse that's on its way, clearly it's not here yet, Kate Greenberg, our other guest this evening, is joining us by Zoom. So thank goodness for technology. And with that, I am thrilled to welcome you tonight to Palmer Land Conservancy's 7th Women in Conservation event, an evening of inspiration and celebration, and maybe a little snow, around our shared passion and love for Colorado. It truly is an absolute honor to be here with all of you tonight within a room full of remarkable people dedicated to conservation. Tonight has been made possible to some wonderful sponsors, and I'd love to offer them a special thanks. Lyda Hill Philanthropies, GEI Consultants, and Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. I'd also love to offer a special thanks to the Palmer team, who has done a tremendous job organizing this event. I take no credit. They've also done a tremendous job pivoting in the face of a snowpocalypse. So Astrid, Carrie, Dylan, thank you. Wes. Since 1977, Palmer Land Conservancy has been a local conservation champion, helping to protect and steward 138,000 acres of land forever, including 20 of your favorite outdoor escapes, like Stratton Open Space, Red Rock Canyon Open Space, paint mines, and many others. We work on the front lines of cutting-edge water and conservation initiatives that work to balance the competing needs of water that allow for growing cities, thriving agriculture, and a healthy environment. In short, we exist to ensure all the reasons you love Colorado, the outdoor recreation, local food, scenic views, can be enjoyed today and for future generations. Conservation provides solutions to our most challenging community issues. However, positioning conservation as a top-of-mind choice requires creating a culture shift where conservation moves from being an unknown and intangible aspect of our lives, or worse, being inaccessible, misunderstood, and elitist, to becoming recognized and experienced as essential to our individual and collective health and well-being. To achieve that, for Palmer, the path forward is clear: to inspire and mobilize people and communities to shift how they understand, relate, and ultimately act on behalf of conservation. That is why we're here tonight, to forge a stronger network of amazing people who are deeply committed to protecting Colorado. Tenacity Women in Conservation is always such a fun and inspiring event, and I hope that tonight we can listen and learn from one another and ultimately leave here with new insights, connections, friendships, and feeling supported and empowered to tackle what lies before us. Why specifically women in conservation? To me, there's nothing more powerful than a group of women gathered together and motivated to get important work done. And a few of you amazing, great men here. Thank you. In that spirit, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our guests this evening, each forging their own unique path in their respective fields, helping to advance important issues related to nurturing our communities across Colorado. We are going to get a more detailed introduction in just a minute, but please join me in welcoming virtually Kate Greenberg, Colorado Commissioner of Agriculture, and the first woman to hold this position. I like to call her the Ag Boss. Nancy Henjum, Colorado Springs Council Member for District 5, and Andrea Miller, founder and CEO of Your Tango, a nationally recognized digital media company focused on relationships, self-empowerment, and emotional wellness. Our questions tonight are designed in a way so that not only can we get to know their professional accomplishments, accomplishments, say that 3 times, and vision, but also as a way to get to know you in a more personal and reflective way, something we rarely have an opportunity to do in the fast-paced nature of our lives. To kick off our conversation, I'd like to invite each of you to introduce yourselves and share with us 3 things. In your words, tell us what you do. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up? What is your superpower? Let's start with Kate.
Well, good evening, everyone. And I first off want to say thank you to Christy and the entire team for being so flexible. I'm up on the Northern Front Range this week, and the snow is certainly coming down. So I hope everyone has a safe night, but we always welcome the moisture in agriculture. So when it comes to describing what I do, I serve as the Colorado Commissioner of Agriculture. What that means is essentially I run our State Department of Agriculture, and I serve in the governor's cabinet. So I serve as an advisor on agriculture to the governor. But of course, the communities we serve are much broader than that. There's over 36,000 farms and ranches across the state that rely on our services and our support as an agency, and countless other communities that we engage with and provide resources for. So much of our job at CDA, Department of Agriculture, and my job as commissioner is being out in the community, understanding what the challenges are, what people are actually facing, and working to then shape our agency in such a way that's reflective of the needs of the communities that we serve. And there's so many ways that we're building that work here at CDA these days. But that's really the bread and butter of it in my mind. When I was a kid, I never thought about being a farmer. I didn't grow up in a farm family. I grew up in the Midwest in Minnesota, went west for college to Walla Walla, Washington, which is big ag country. Fell in love with farming in college and started my farming career there, working on farms in both Eastern and Western Washington, and then across the Intermountain West. And I realized some point in that journey that if I wanted to really work in agriculture and for agriculture, I couldn't just escape the world of policy making and of politics. Turns out it kind of influences our life in agriculture, the decisions that are made. So all of this has sort of come organically just from being in the field and working with farming communities across the West. But when I was young, I actually was most inspired by polar explorers. Growing up in Minnesota, there's a high percentage that are around us in the far north. And I think there is something similar to their journey. Of course, the risk is different. The intensity is different, but I'm still so drawn to people who are stepping out into new frontiers and trying to understand what to bring back to society that we can learn from those frontiers. A superpower, I think was your third question, Christy. That's always a tough one. I am a generalist and an extrovert. And so I have no specific superpower other than enjoying being in crowds of people. And that's another reason I'm bummed I'm not with you tonight in person. But I think looking for the strengths in a community of people to try and get things done is where I think I'm best suited and do a lot of that in this role.
Thank you. Nancy.
Great, thank you. Is my mic on? Can you hear me? Do I need, there we go. Okay. So yes, I'm Nancy Henjum, and I am the City Council representative in Colorado Springs for District 5, which is really the center of our city. It goes from I-25 out to Powers and more or less Platt on the south to Fillmore, Austin Bluffs on the north, has about 80,000 people in it. And I ran for that position 3 years ago. I've been in the role for 3 years, in addition to serving as City Council, which, as most of you know, we deal with land use matters. We pass the budget for the city of Colorado Springs, legislation, that sort of thing. I also serve on the board of directors for our Forest Service ratepayer-owned Colorado Springs utilities, which I'm very proud and have come to learn a lot about and enjoy very much. It's an extremely important part of the role that I think is not necessarily well known or understood by folks. So that is really the work that I do every day. I stepped away from a career in, I started in social work. I'll go to what I wanted to be growing up was a nurse. And then I flunked out of biochemistry my first semester in college and was like, okay, this isn't gonna work. But clearly I wanted to help people. So I ended up becoming a social worker, and I did that for a number of years. and then morphed that into executive coaching and organizational work, which I've done for the last 20 years. Although the last 3, very, very little of that work, because most of my time is devoted to serving in those roles as city council and board of utilities. My superpower, I would like to think, is listening and connecting people. That's what I strive to do at any rate. So
you do it well.
I'll call it my superpowers. That's it.
I'm Andrea Miller. I'm the CEO and founder of a media company called Your Tango. Our mission is to revolutionize relationships. I started it, about 20 years ago. The quick insight that I had in looking at the very crowded media landscape back then was, especially targeting women, when you looked at the crowded media landscape, was so much of it was targeted to women and featuring things like 59 ways to please your man, 17 tricky ways to get him to propose to you, just lose 10 pounds and you'll be happy. And I just thought none of that's really ever been interesting to me or the women that I'm close to. Probably a few of you as well. And what was really obvious to me as an outsider, my background had been finance and engineering, was the white space around love and relationships. And so I built a career out of it, and I'm gonna give a quick shout out to my husband, who's here and also on the board of Palmer. There's always a great man behind a great woman, right? And I shout him out because he is a co-founder and CTO of this business, and we're so proud of it. And in addition, I started a podcast about 6 months ago that I'm also really proud of. It's called Open Relationships. Now, before you get like, whoa, we are trying to encourage people to open up emotionally. So Open Relationships, Transforming Together. It's on iHeart and Spotify and YouTube, anywhere where you get your podcasts. And I'm really, really passionate about relational wellness. And so I love to talk about the wellness triangle. What we need in the wellness triangle is physical wellness and eating well and getting exercise and getting sleep and so forth. We all know that we need emotional and mental wellness to have healthy, happy lives, but the data that's gone back literally decades shows that the relational wellness is absolutely key to our physiological well-being, our emotional and mental well-being. And so you can't thrive in the absence of love. As I like to say, if you hate your spouse and everything else is going great in your life, you can't thrive. And I know a lot of people struggle with relationships, especially right now. There's a loneliness epidemic. So I'm extraordinarily passionate about it, in part because I feel like there's so much hope. I feel like there's so much hope. And honestly, Sanjay and I struggled in our marriage, and we're open about it because we want other people to go, oh yeah, there's hope for me too, to transform. And we've got 2 great kids, and it's not easy being a working parent. So anyway, so that's that's the thing that says I'm talking too long? It's like, ring. So I actually wanted to be listening to, is it Kate or Katie? Kate, okay, I want to call her Katie. Kate, I'm also from Minnesota, and listening to you, I remembered I actually wanted to be a pioneer growing up, and I come from a family of farmers, so I'm feeling like we got some synergy here. Ooh, I don't know. I think I'm talking too long. Anyway, and my superpower, and I say this completely earnestly, is caring. And I've built a very successful business with a group of people that have been with me for a really long time. I'm blessed to have amazing friends and family. And I feel like when I think about love is an action word. At the heart of that, to me, is how do we show our love? Well, it's through caring, and that is an action. And so that's what I care about most.
Thank you. You had a footnote?
Just a quick footnote, if I could. I did also want to mention and say, I'm really sorry that Rebecca can't be here tonight, and I know this is being recorded on Zoom. I hope she'll have a chance to watch it, because I know this is her favorite event of the year. But I also wanted to say that I actually had the opportunity to do a little work with Palmer when I was doing organizational coaching and consulting, which I still do a little bit of, but this is how I came to know about Palmer and love this organization so dearly. So just wanted to.
We loved that time that she guided and facilitated our workshop. One of my biggest takeaways, and I tell her this all the time, every time I see you, you act like you don't remember, but she spoke a lot about agency. And as a woman, I thought that was a very powerful word to learn about and embody, and you definitely embody it. Well, we're going to move into some more questions. Kate would love to come back to you. Again, you were Colorado's first female agricultural commissioner, ag boss, and likely the youngest. Is that right? Were you the youngest? Yeah. Can you share with us?
So.
Yeah. Can you share with us what it has been like over the last 6 years since your appointment, and what inspired you to dedicate yourself to advocating and advancing agriculture in Colorado?
Yeah, well, 6 years. So I'm in my 6th year. It's been 5 full years. I've been with the governor since his first day in office in 2019. And I can say that year 1 was very different from now year 6. And I think that says something to sticking around and continuing the work over time. So year 1, I was a very unusual candidate for ag commissioner. I actually applied to the position. I didn't know the governor. And I was an organizer. And so I had actually been reaching out to young farmers across Colorado. I worked for an organization called the National Young Farmers Coalition. Thought, what a great opportunity for a young farmer to join a cabinet. I mean, it's kind of one of the ultimate goals of our organizing efforts. But if there are any farmers in the room, if somebody came to you and said, hey, how do you feel about leaving your farm for, 4 to 8 years and moving to Denver and working for the government? How do you feel about that? Well, got a lot of blank stares. But at the time I was living in Durango. That's been home base for me for a long time, and didn't have a farm of my own. So I applied to the position. And in that first year, I had worked with a lot of people in my previous role, but becoming commissioner and now being in charge of what is, I think in a lot of people's minds and in a lot of ways, a regulatory agency that has a lot of authority over how people do business. Rightly so, there was a lot of questions and a lot of concern about who I was and what I was going to do stepping into this role. So I spent that first year pretty much on the road. It's a little bit in my blood to just be a road warrior and have a lot of windshield time across the state. But that was most important to me, to make sure I'm having face time with folks and they get to know me and that we build this trust over time. So now in year 6, we've gone from that to now having worked through a pandemic together with the ag community, 3 of our largest wildfires, 2.5 years of responding to a foreign animal disease. And that's the tough stuff. But the great thing is that we've done a lot of good things together as an ag community. And so I think this sticking with it, the stick with itness of just continuing to show up, means that we get to have small wins as a community that grow into bigger wins. And I think that's really true for conservation work as well as ag. The second part of the question, Christy, is, can you remind me that second part?
I need to remind myself. What inspired you to dedicate yourself to advocating and advancing agriculture in Colorado? What was the inspiration?
So when I started farming in college, so I as I mentioned, I grew up in the North Country. I mean, part-time rural, part-time urban, and I love both. And I think that's also important to where we are in ag these days, is that we can be more than one thing. And when I came out west and started farming, I just absolutely fell in love with the work. I fell in love with the people. And I realized that I could tie my conservation ethic into something tangible, more tangible than my time I've spent canoeing in the north or backpacking in the west, which I love dearly, but to actually be putting my work into the soil, into feeding people, into growing food, and tying that in with a conservation ethic, really kind of lit a fire in me. And then being in ag, I got to start working with so many amazing people. And gosh, I mean, the folks in ag run the gamut, just like any community. But on the whole, they're tough, they're hardworking, they're committed, they're opinionated. It is a whole lot of fun working in agriculture, and it's never dull. So I think the people are my constant sort of fire for advocating for ag. And then what's possible for us to build in ag and build in conservation as an agricultural community as well.
Love that. Thank you. Nancy, as an elected official, you see and deal with the best and the worst in people, the bright side and the dark side of civil society. And we have to imagine that you frequently oscillate between hope and despair. Perhaps let's call it not hope. How do you harness the grit and determination to lead Colorado's second largest city?
I love this question so much. I really do. When the first set of questions we did not know about, that was totally spontaneous. But we got a chance to think about some of the others. And I really appreciate this question immensely because I have been in a conversation with hope for a number of years. And I'll unpack that in a minute. But first I want to say, I know of at least 2 former elected officials in the room sitting right here. My predecessor, Jill Gabler, former city councilwoman, and Councilwoman Jan Martin. And maybe there are others, but yes, thank them for their service. And I call them out because you can't know what it's like until you've done it. And it is hard. And I have relied on both of them to help me. So that's part of it. We all need people who we can go to and who can support us. But in terms of the hope and despair, the light and the dark that we see, yeah, and it's only feels like it's getting worse. The polarization that is in our country has trickled down and found its way right down onto the dais of our city council. And some of that is just natural, right? Like we have opposite, we have different parties and you have different values. That's great. Good conflict is great. But when it devolves into where you do feel despairing because people may not be listening to each other or you can't get things done, it is really hard. So I have really been working on this concept of hope, and you're right, hope can lead to despair when what you're hoping for doesn't happen. So what I've been working on is letting go of the attachment to the outcome of what I'm hoping for and doing the work because it's the right thing to do or because there's joy in the work that I'm doing, not because there's an outcome that I want. Now, don't get me wrong, that is like work that sometimes happens from minute to minute. But with a lot of practice, and by practice I mean reminding myself, reading. I will share later about, you asked about a book, about an author that's helped me immensely with this, meditation, yoga, taking all the things we do to take care of ourselves. Nature, nature creates its own refuge when it experiences a fire or something that really harms the environment. Nature will create little places of refuge for it to heal itself. And I think that's one of the things that we can do and should do for each other, is to create those refuge through relationship, through love, through being outdoors, through farming, all the things. But so I would say the way I do it is to change at least what my definition or understanding of what hope was, which is not to be attached to what I'm hoping for, but doing the work because it's the right thing to do.
It's beautiful. Andrea, as the founder of Your Tango, a platform centered around relationships, how do you perceive our connection with nature impacting our overall well-being, both personally and in our relationships with others?
Well, for us, it's super, I guess, close to home for our family. We lived in New York City for 19 years, as I referenced a little while ago. We have 2 young kids, and we would come out to Colorado to ski in the spring and hike in the summer, and we would almost always come through Colorado Springs because some of you may know the name Dick Celeste and Jacqueline Lundquist. So some of our dear friends, Dick was the president of Colorado College, and Jacqueline worked with Sanjay. And so we would travel through Colorado Springs, and we fell in love with Colorado Springs. Of course, we already loved skiing and being out in the mountains. And having lived in New York City, these dear friends of ours said, you know what, we think you're gonna be better off raising your kids in Colorado. And we couldn't disagree. In fact, when Sanjay and I first moved to New York, we always said we're going to move to Colorado. We just didn't agree on when that would be. We didn't think it would take 19 years. So for us, I mean, we made a very deliberate choice to move to a place where we were drawn. I mean, people always ask, well, why'd you, oh my God, leaving the Upper West Side of New York, that's a big move. It is a really big move. And it was the best decision we ever made. And so for us, it was having really dear friends that we loved here in Colorado Springs, and of course the land itself, and then of course just feeling like like I said, I'm from Minnesota, to feel like I have the opportunity to raise our kids closer to the land. And New York is great in a lot of ways, but it felt like we are going to give them so many more advantages by living here. So that, so for us, that feeling of just, or that choice, I should say, that's what we decided. And so when I think about, the connection between what I do in the land, I mean, I think we all know this, like the data is really clear in terms of spending time outside and being fit. And, I'm reminded that people in Japan pay to go nature bathing, right? I mean, I think about the great gift physiologically and emotionally, and back to the wellness triangle. So for me here in Colorado and connecting the dots, it's taking care of the land because it's fun, it's good for us physiologically, emotionally, mentally, and it's like whether it's skiing or hiking or any number of things that we do outside, biking, we just benefit here in Colorado. And it's like we were talking about right before this started, Christy, I said, it reminds me a lot of taking your health for granted, right? When you're young and fit, you take your health for granted until it starts to falter a little. And that's how it feels like the land is for a lot of us, where it's like you take it for granted, it's beautiful, it's always there. Oh crap, it's not always there. It needs to be protected. And as a mom, I feel a massive sense of urgency, obviously for my kids, but it's like for the next generation, set of generations, I do feel like we are custodians and need to take our opportunity here really seriously so that subsequent generations have what we have.
Agreed. Kate, coming back to you, what do you see as the most exciting opportunities for the state's agricultural sector in the coming years, especially for people not very familiar with the agricultural industry?
So, yeah, and thinking about this, Colorado agriculture is so diverse. And that's one thing I love about agriculture in Colorado is that we have, we've got the big players, corn, wheat, cows, beef, you name it, we've got it, dairy, big time here. But we've also got, of course, down in Southeast Colorado, places like Rocky Ford that have made a name for themselves with melons, Pueblo chili, of course, our fruit growing regions on the western slope, the fact that we recognize Palisade peaches and Olathe sweet corn. We also grow dry beans here in multiple places across the state. We're growing quinoa in the San Luis Valley, where we grow potatoes of so many varieties and are exporting across the world. So you think about if you were to build a plate, no matter your dietary preferences, you could build it based on what we grow and raise here in Colorado. And that's at all scales. That's at half an acre to 20,000 with, public lands management included in that. So I love the breadth and diversity of what we have. So I think one thing that I'm excited about for the future is fostering and protecting that diversity, making it so that anybody who wants to be a part of agriculture can find a place for themselves, no matter where they come from, no matter their background, and no matter what part of the food system they want to be a part in. I think that's the exciting thing about ag too. I mean, you can do what I did and come up as an intern and then a full-time farm worker, essentially on different size operations. You can also, so much is emerging with technology. You can be part of our food system with technology, with connecting families and communities to healthy food, running a food or ag business. So I think that's one thing that excites me. I think in this context for what we're talking about with regards to conservation, and this is a lot of the work that we're doing at the department, there's a whole lot of opportunity to continue melding conservation with production. And how do we bring in a sort of a holistic mindset? Of course, holistic management is a practice in agriculture that's gaining more and more traction. How do we look at the whole of what we're managing on the landscape and in these businesses that are stewarding land and growing and raising food? How do we look at that whole to create, a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts? And there's so many incredible land stewards and practitioners in ag who are leading the charge on that. And I think we've got a whole lot of of room to grow, especially when it comes to climate mitigation, climate resilience, drought resilience, looking at new crops, new growing practices. We launched a soil health program that was all farmer and rancher led. Farmers telling us this is what we need to do to build a healthier soil, to retain that moisture in the soil, help draw down carbon and grow great food. And we're just, I think, at the tip of the iceberg of what's possible.
That's very exciting. Thank you. Nancy, how do you see your role as councilwoman in nurturing a community-wide appreciation for our natural surroundings?
Thank you. It's really such a great privilege, actually, to be in the role and to use the position. Okay? And to use the position to be able to elevate and make connections. And the first thing I want to say is, of course, I mentioned earlier, one of the most significant pieces of responsibility we have on City Council is around land use and managing, making land use decisions. And I like to see and understand and know the land as sustainer, as a source of knowledge, as something that is sacred. And yet, in our form of government, it is also things that people own, and they have a right to do with what they want. And so balancing those sometimes seemingly in conflict realities is really interesting. But I do have the opportunity, and by the way, I'm going to just call out Britt Haley, who is works and heads our City Parks and Cultural Recreation Department. She deserves a big round of applause. I have the opportunity to work with folks like Britt in the role who is doing incredible things around using our TOPS money to make sure that we have open space, and she is remarkable at that. It is about using that kind of position to uplift, and therefore I want to tell a little bit of a story about one of the very specific ways that I do this, and this has started right at the very beginning for me, and I continue to do it. But I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you know Alan Beauchamp. Raise your hand. Okay, most of this room knows Alan Beauchamp. And if you don't know Alan, you need to know Alan, because that guy knows every inch of trail in this city and county. He loves it, he uplifts it, he teaches people about it, he takes people on it, he teaches kids. He is amazing. And I'm sorry he's not here tonight. I know he's a big supporter of Palmer's. And I like to go out with Alan and invite people, to join us. Let's go on the trail and let's learn about the environment, the natural environment. And he does all the work because he's smart as a whip and he can say things that I don't have to remember, but I can bring people to Alan and I can uplift the work that he's doing, the work that Trails and Open Space Coalition is doing. I can make connections with another person over there, Becky Lineweber, who's working in PPRA.
Let me come on the next one with you.
Okay, good. Okay. So it's such a privilege. It's such an honor to be able to use that position. Really, I think anybody in this room, if you're here, it's because you care about our land. And so, if you have an idea about how you want to, forward it, get with me, because if I've got some influence that I can use, I will, if it's in the service of the land. So
Noted. Andrea, thank you, Nancy. Why do you think our bond with nature carries such profound importance in enriching our lives?
I'm going to read a quote from Henry David Thoreau in 1853, almost 200 years ago. He wrote in his journal, "All nature is doing her best each moment to make us well. She exists for no other end. Do not resist her." And honestly, when I think about, am I allowed to swear, our effing phones, we are all spending too much time on these devices of mass distraction. And there's a loneliness epidemic, there's a mental health crisis happening in the world. And so when I think about the fact that this is what we have in our backyard, particularly here in Colorado, and I realize there's other pockets all over the place, but we're talking about our community, it feels like it is so key to our well-being to use and love and appreciate the land, to put our phones down, and then, sincerely to tune in to each other, to our bodies, And it's like, it's the most obvious thing in the world, and I realize I'm preaching to the converted here because you are all here for that reason. But that, I feel like that is the obvious answer, is to take advantage of this incredible gift that we have in living here. And like I said a little while ago, taking care of it for future generations. And it is, I mean, I'm guilty as anybody to use my phone too much. And so I challenge all of you to put your phones down, to tune in more to each other, and even to take it to the next step. If it's like, I'm being a little slack on going for a hike or being outside, not to put that off. And again, I'm tying it back to the loneliness epidemic. And a lot of us might say, oh, that's just out there. It's not. It is in almost all of our lives. And when you talk to our kids, our older son goes to the Cheyenne Mountain Junior High, you talk to some of the counselors there, it's bad with our kids. And it's like our kids are relatively athletic, but they're spending a lot of time on their phones and devices. And we're pretty conscientious parents, and we even feel like we are fighting an uphill battle. And so I emphasize this because I do feel like it's incumbent upon all of us, especially parents, but each other to look at those habits and how detrimental they are in our lives. And especially as parents, for us to join together a little bit, because I mean, here's what my kids will say. Well, all my friends are online for 17 hours. It's like, oh my God, like I want to band together with the other moms and dads and say, let's all collectively, really try to get together and curb that. And I realize people spending time on their phones, it's like, well, what does that have to do with conservation in the outdoors? But like one of our sons, the eye doctor's like, hey, his vision isn't very good. He needs to go outside more. I mean, it's real. So I connect these dots because we are all living in the digital society. Almost all of us are impacted by social media. Nancy, something I wanted to come back, even when you're talking about the hope and the despair, I interviewed somebody on my podcast today. I called him the anti-cancel culture hero that we need now. And his whole platform is about hard conversations. And I'm like, dude, sign me up. Because what I feel like we are missing in so much of our civic society, I think we're a little bit better here in Colorado, quite honestly, than a lot of places that are polarized, but we're polarized here too. To be able to hear an opinion that you disagree with and even find objectionable. And there are extremes, I think we can all agree. The extremes are noisy and distracting. White extremism, not okay, right? But there's a lot of room for disagreement that reasonable people will say, I disagree. And I think it's incumbent upon us, and again, literally each one of us, to create that space to say, I disagree, and to be proactive, because it's so much easier not, especially now on, whether it's in social media or sitting here in a real conversation, swallow it, keep it to yourself, because you don't want to upset anybody, but then you feel bad because your voice isn't heard. And it's like, I realize this starts to be like, whoa, this like a big ball of wax over here, but I do bring it back to city council and our civic society, our civil society, I should say, because I do think it's incumbent upon us to keep space for dissent and respectful differing opinions. And let's face it, I think there's a lot of anxiety, again, we know it, the data is really apparent, especially if Sanjay and I listened to a poetry reading, and I realize it's a tangent, but a poetry reading in the 8th grade class, and these are 8th graders that wrote their own poems and recited them over at Starsmore. It cracked me open to listen to some of these young people. Cracked me open. And so when I think about the anxiety and the depression and the fear, is there going to be an environment, for some of these young people? That fear is real. So I think it's our jobs as the adults to make it safe for them to talk about things and for us to be respectful and so forth, because let's face it, there's a lot of fear out there. And I think for us as especially with Palmer, to say, one of my favorite quotes from Marianne Williamson is, hope is born of participation. And so for us to participate and to get our kids to participate, it's like, okay, I'm a perennial optimist. I'm like, oh my gosh, the best is yet to come. But I also think that is much, that can be lip service if we're not doing anything about it. And so anyway, I realize that was a very long, kind of discursive answer, but I do feel like each of us has a voice, and it's incumbent upon us, especially in times of such strife and such divisiveness, to be able to listen to each other, even when we are so diametrically opposed politically, because there's so much more common ground that connects us.
I think that's why I love conservation and have found it to be a very fulfilling and rewarding career, because I feel that it's very symbolic of what's possible. It's nonpartisan, it welcomes all sides. Everyone has a seat at the table, and at the end of the day, the land is there. So I appreciate what you shared. Thank you very much. One more question, and then we're going to move into a really fun lightning round. But I'm really curious. I'd love to hear from each of you. This question is for all three of you. Gender discrimination exists in nearly all industry sectors. How have you not let it hold you back from reaching your potential? Andrea, can we start with you, just to change it up, keep it spicy?
Well, first, quick question. Are we going to have time for Q&A at the end of this?
We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like people, I'm hoping to hear from everybody, or some people anyway. I'm really fortunate in my industry. It's definitely male dominated. What I will tell you is I'm part of the 97% of women that fail to raise venture capital, right? 3% of women succeed in raising venture capital. And in a lot of ways, if you ask me way back when, oh my gosh, I would like shake my fist at the sky and all the male venture capitalists that didn't believe in me. Now it is one of the best things that happened to me, because I run a business that's profitable, that still exists. And probably a lot of you know that when it comes to venture capital, if you don't achieve certain benchmarks early on, you're left as roadkill. And so, they just want you to spend and get the eyeballs, and don't worry about profit. Just get your revenue growth, and it works sometimes, but typically not often. And so I'm thankful. My husband is one of my earliest investors. I'm thankful for all the men that didn't believe in me, because we are doing really, really important work that's making a positive impact in the world.
Thank you. I love that turn. Nancy.
I thought a lot about this question, and certainly it exists. There's no question about it. But right now in City Council, 4 out of the 9 are women. It's great. And I decided that, I'm just going to kind of ignore that discrimination stuff. And I've got a voice, and I'm going to use it. So that's really the answer to my question. There's a lot of incredible women. There are so many incredible women in this room. There are so many incredible women leaders. I think we're changing that narrative. I really do.
Love it. Kate?
Well, I don't know if I can say it better than Nancy and Andrea already have. I think, for me, it's just keep on doing the work. And it's not that it doesn't exist, but, I think when I'm in a room and it's just me and I'm the only woman, which is common in agriculture, it's really about what are we here to get done. And I've had one of my first interviews as commissioner. The first question I was asked is, you haven't decorated your office yet. And I said, well, I kind of want to talk about like climate change and, young farmers. How about we just move on to that? So I think it's really just staying focused on why we're here, right? And the work that we're doing. But I love connecting with other women and young girls in this work. I work a lot with FFA, the Future Farmers of America. There's the Manners organization at CSU, Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences. We work a lot with them. There's just incredible young women leadership coming up through all corners of the state. And part of what I love of being a woman in this role is connecting with other women, just like on stage today, the 3 of you and so many of you in the audience who are doing this work across Colorado.
Thank you. Now we're going to do a fun and quick, what we call a lightning round of questions intentionally asked in a way that allows for only one word or short phrases. We're going to start back with Kate. Girl, heels or boots?
Boots all the way.
That was very predictable.
Boots. I mean, both.
hybrid.
I chose these just for that.
I love it. I love it. We're gonna.
Kate, these are my high heel boots.
Andrea, starting with you. Favorite power breakfast?
Cheesy scrambled eggs. That's hyphenated.
Nancy.
I'm sorry, I have two. Merle Scramble from King Chef Diner. Oh my God, best breakfast on the planet. And if I'm not going out, Nightingale bread toasted with peanut butter and berries on top. Oh. Burnt. And often burnt. Actually, I do. My husband's here, he can attest. He knows, like, oh, Nancy's up. I smell burnt toast in the house.
You'd be banned from my house.
I don't mind. I don't mind the burnt.
Burnt toast.
Yeah.
Kate, power breakfast.
Man, yeah, I'd say eggs and potatoes.
This next one has been subject for discussion at Palmer. Wide leg, skinny jeans, or neither? Kate.
I am high-rise Levi's all the way.
Good grief. I like both, I guess, or everything, like, you know, both. I don't know. I don't really like jeans. Yoga pants, how's that?
There you go.
I'm going to go with skinny.
Skinny. Someone said skinny was out, and that really depressed
Oh,
me.
it's
That
totally
means my
out.
entire
Oh, it's totally out.
closet
But you
is
didn't
out.
have that.
I love it. Andrea, what motivates you to do hard things?
Making a positive impact on the people around me.
Kate, for Jolie, this is the one I had to really think about. Beauty.
Love that. Kate, what motivates you?
I think Andrea said a quote earlier called, "You can't thrive in the absence of love." And I think love is my motivating factor.
Fill in the blank. I feel most confident when, Kate?
I'm in my high-rise Levi's and my boots.
Totally. Nancy?
I'm on my bike.
Oh, God, that's a hard one. I feel like I thought about it, and now I'm like, Blake. I feel most confident when I'm with people that believe in me. I mean, it's just, I feel like it becomes really synergistic.
Favorite book?
Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
I brought it with me. Who Do We Choose to Be by Meg Wheatley. Facing Reality, Claiming Leadership, and Restoring Sanity. Great wisdom in that book. Whew.
Kate?
It's always hard for me to choose a favorite, but I did just read The Farmer's Lawyer, which I highly recommend.
Oh. Kate, what's your stress release?
Man, I think being in nature, either being on a farm or being in a wild place.
Nancy?
Yes.
Underscored.
Yes, absolutely. And I also play Wordle every day and the spelling bee, and I just skip the headlines and go straight to the games.
Love it.
I'm going to give full credit to Palmer. For me, it is very specifically Strawberry Fields. So for those of you who know that area near the Broadmoor that was rehabilitated, maybe that's not the right word, thanks to Palmer's intervention, we live just up the street, and our neighbors are there too. It is the best backyard, and I lived next to Central Park previously. This blows Central Park away. So, Strawberry Fields.
I love it. Well, these are our final questions for the evening. What is one thing you want us to remember from tonight, Kate?
I think a takeaway for me is the potential to continue to wed agriculture and conservation as we think about how we're going to feed ourselves in the future and how we're going to protect a land base that really needs our protection, including water, right? I mean, water is going to be the anchor point of the future of Colorado. How do we make sure we're bringing together how we produce our food and how we protect our land and water?
That women are badass leaders, and we need each other, and it all ultimately gets done through conversation and relationship.
Oh, I love both of those. And just building on them, I said it before, but this idea that hope is born of participation, the fact that you guys are all showing up on a night of a snowstorm, and that we've got organizations like Palmer's that we can contribute to, and Nancy, with your work in City Council, I mean, to be politically active. A lot of us are complaining about what's happening in politics. I got a good talking to the other day. Are you, like, what are you doing with, supporting your local politicians? What are you doing on, city council and school board and stuff? And I went ashen. And so I do think what we should be thinking about is how all of us can be more participatory in our local, government and conservation.
What do you want to tell the next generation of conservationists and leaders, Andrea?
The best is yet to come, and I sincerely believe that. I mean, I know there's a lot of concerns about AI. I think, yes, some jobs are going to be lost, but let's face it, a lot of jobs were lost when the automobile surfaced on the planet. I mean, we always say the one constant is change. And so when I think about the opportunities for AI and what's happening in biotech, what's happening in a lot of technology, I feel profoundly optimistic, but I also know that with our kids spending a lot of time on Fortnite and their phones, again, I do feel like it's incumbent upon us as parents and aunties and uncles and neighbors and so forth, to really spend that time encouraging our kids to get internships and to put themselves out there, to take risks and create a better, more beautiful world.
I actually wrote down, it's not very long, but I really thought about this, and I
won't police you.
I want to read it. So to young conservationists, to all of us, that each day we wake up and remember that we always have a choice. We find ways that work for us to practice choosing curiosity over certainty, generosity over scarcity, compassion over indifference, and that we notice our fear and choose to be in relationship with people who nurture your courage. When you choose these things for yourself, you will be helping to nurture and create refuge for others that will help them thrive, which will serve the land and the earth, because it's all connected.
Kate?
Maybe just the final point on that is to keep on keeping on. Don't give up. Every day's a new day.
Yeah.
And gosh, to take what Nancy and Andrea just said and live that even through failure and setback, because tomorrow's a new day, to keep on pushing forward.
Yeah.
Kate, can I come out to the farm with you sometime and hang out and put on some boots and high-waisted jeans?
Anytime.
Closing thoughts, ladies. Is there anything else you would like us to know? Ooh. No?
You know what I would say is the people who are here in the room, just turn to the person next to you and thank them for being here and being alive.
Thank you. Come on.
Just going to give you a couple closing remarks. I love it. That was beautiful. I want to offer a special thank you to Andrea, Nancy, and Kate. Wow, that was tremendous. Especially for bringing your hearts and your vision to our conversation tonight and to our communities ongoingly. Tonight, we are reminded that the conservation of our land and water and our connection to both are values that transcend partisanship and unite us as Coloradans. Conservation shows up in our daily lives, from walking in your favorite park to the simple act of turning on your faucet with clean drinking water, to savoring locally sourced produce, to the awe-inspiring views of Pikes Peak and Garden of the Gods. Conservation is a solution to many of our community challenges, and I encourage us all to remember that it is essential to our health and well-being. In this audience tonight, I know so many of you are Palmer members. Thank you. You are the people who support our organization so that together we can continue protecting our state's land and water. To our members and donors, again, thank you. We truly can't do this work without you. If you're not a Palmer member yet, please, I invite you to join us. It can be as little as $35, and that's not little, that's huge for us. Please consider that. Help us amplify the scale, pace, and importance of conservation in Colorado. In closing, remember, loving a place is only the beginning. You have to have the courage to protect it. That concludes our program this evening. Thank you all so much for being here. We wish you a beautiful and safe travels home. I know that you were eager to do some Q&A, so I invite you, when we're done here, to please come, ask your questions, connect, and enjoy another drink and some more food. Thank you so much for being here.